I'm recording this interview for the Library of Congress. The veteran's name is John Elliot Wright. He was born on May 12th, 1922. He served in World War II in the Asiatic Pacific Campaign. He achieved the rank of Boatswain 3rd class. We're recording this on October 19th, 2012 at Clemson University in South Carolina. I am Daniel Mack and I'm conducting the interview of no relation. Mr. Wright, why don't you tell us about where you were born and just your life growing up in general?
I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, lived in the town of Sharon. We grew up on a small farm, and I'm fourth oldest of 13 children.
Fourth oldest of, what was, you were born in 1922, what was growing up like school like then and going around and just...
Well, during the Depression, there wasn't much going on. And we lived on the farm, and, you know, that's about all there was to it.
Grew your own food and pretty much kept lived off the land for yourself, for your family?
Yeah.
You, when did you graduate high school? Or graduate with any type of, just finish your schooling in general?
Well, I actually shouldn't say it, but I didn't actually graduate. I went to CCCs in 1938. And of course the CCCs were run by the Army. So when Pearl Harbor came, I didn't want anything to do with the Army, so I went in the Navy.
Did you, where were you when you first heard the news about Pearl Harbor?
I was down at Nantasket Beach in Hull, Mass. A bunch of us boys were down there. September 7th was a Sunday, and the loudspeaker at Paragon Park across Atlantic Avenue in Hull, over the loudspeaker they had announced that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. So on the 10th of December, all us guys went into Boston to the Federal Building to sign up. They had so many guys signing up that we were sent home, and they called us when they had room for us. The 30th of December, we got the call. We went into the Federal Building in Boston on the 31st, got sworn in December 31st, 1941. Went to boot camp, New Year's Day, 1942. They made 21 companies that day in Newport, Rhode Island. I was in company 21. We had 21 days of boot camp. And
only 21?
Only 21 days, just long enough to get your shots. And I was a supernumerary when they broke camp, being a W at the bottom of the alphabet. So I got assigned to cut the stencil we stencil our clothing with in Newport to the new recruits coming in. And the middle of April 1942, I got my orders to go to Newport News, Virginia, to the U.S.S. Indiana. And I spent my entire career then on the Indiana.
And so, what day did you first set foot on Indiana, and what were you thinking when you got on the ship?
Well, let's see. We went down to... It must have been right around the 28th or 29th or something like that. They had us go on the ship and get in our quarters, because the ship was commissioned on April 30th. And we were all up on the ship at that time.
And what was when you first saw the Indiana? What did you think? What was
awesome? Huge. I never saw a ship that big.
Was she lined up next to other ships?
Pardon?
Was she lined up next to other ships in the harbor? What'd you think?
I can't remember. I know we were still at the repair dock, building docks and so. I don't think there was any ships around it. Unless there was, I didn't notice.
Well, that's what I was getting at. How she compared to other ones, but she was the only one for you.
She was the only big one there at the time, yeah.
And so when you first got on, what was how long did you spend there before you went through the Panama Canal?
Oh, that was the April 30th. We commissioned her, and of course they finished repairing. The Navy took her over, and then we went on trial runs from Chesapeake Bay up to Casco Bay, Maine, twice. They came back the first time and changed the propellers from 5-bladed and 4-bladed to 4-bladed and 3-bladed. We went on trial run back to Casco Bay, came back, went dry dock, took the 3-bladed screws off, put the 4-bladed back inside, 5-bladed back outside. That's what we ended up with, 5-blade and 4-blade, which were the best blades for the ship. We left in, I forget, near the end of November to go through over to get to Pearl Harbor.
And where were you on the ship? I guess in.
I was in the 4th Division, which is a deck division. The fan, we called it the steel deck aft, ended just after turret 3, and then the 4th Division had the stern. We controlled the Kingfisher. I'll say the Kingfisher planes we had on the catapults. They had 2 catapults on the ship. The 4th.
So what were your specific duties?
And we had 40 millimeters, and I ended up on the 05 level on the starboard side above the bridge. And I started out as a first loader, then I went from first loader to spotter we went several battles. We shot down one. My mount actually shot down one of the
and so you were right there in front of the bridge?
Pardon?
You were right there in front of the bridge?
Just above the bridge.
So you were responsible for anything coming directly at?
Oh yes, we were shooting at them. No, we shot my gun mount. The gun mount I was spotter for. We actually shot down one kamikaze that had gotten through, and the water from the splash when he hit the water splashed up on deck.
And
that's the nearest we actually got to getting hit by anything.
You after you went through the canal, where was the first real area of operations where you started commencing operations?
Well, I forget the layout of the islands now, but we left Noumea, Caledonia, go out to sea, and I forget the first islands we helped to liberate, but we bombarded the islands all the way up to Japan to make easier for the Marines and Army to land and take over.
And you were escorting the Enterprise and the Saratoga?
Oh, the Enterprise, Saratoga, the Hornet, and I forget. I don't remember them all, but there was 3 of them that we did. Bonami, not the Bonami Richard. I don't know whether she was there or not. But there were several carriers in the fleet.
So, do you have a bunkmate?
Do I what?
You have a bunkmate on the ship in the room there with you, or you have several?
Bunkmates?
Yes.
Oh, we still have big compartments, say, as big as this room. And the bunks during the day were folded up. There were 4 in a row, and there was stanchions, between the rows of bunks, and the bunks folded up with the stanchions, so it gives more room in the daytime.
Make sure nobody came back on a break and tried to take a nap in the middle of the day.
Yeah, well, we slept on deck a lot anyway. It was out in the Pacific.
Some of the things, I guess, wouldn't be standard about sleeping on deck and things like that.
Just at night it was so warm, we had no, back then they didn't have air conditioning on the ships, so, and it was always that hot, so there was always guys sleeping under turret 3, on the catapults. Now forward they slept out on deck too, under the turrets. But nothing spectacular.
Did you tell me about some of the friends you made with the men on the ship?
Friends we made?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know there was the gunner's mates for the 40 millimeter guns were part of the 4th Division. I remember the names of a couple of them, and but one of my best friends, Joe Roberts, his birthday was December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. He'll be 90 come this December, and every year when he was my best man when I got married, and because my brothers were too young yet, and every time I send him his birthday card, I always write on it, "Remember Pearl Harbor." So, but we had some experiences. We were going out to gunnery practice one time from Noumea, where this picture here was taken, and somehow we were at a flying moor, and when they were disconnecting the flying moor, somehow or another something happened, and we lost our anchors. We went out to sea without our anchors that day, that trip. And when we come back, of course, they were on the barge and brought them back to the ship.
Anybody get chewed out for that one, or was that just one of those? Anybody in specific get chewed out, or that was just one of those things that just happened?
Oh, it was just an accident, I suppose, that happened. So, I don't want to say how I thought of what happened, but hey, that's my thoughts.
It's your interview, you're free to.
Well, I think what happened was on the bridge somebody got the wrong orders, and we were heading toward the beach, and then I guess they hauled probably all engines astern, and that's when the anchor snapped.
And so somebody said we can either start moving or pull the anchors.
Yeah, we started moving forward instead of reverse. So anyway, we went out without the anchors that time.
And that was the battleship was how big would you say? What would you compare it to, if you could?
Who would I compare it to in size?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Well, you couldn't compare it to anything in size because the carriers were actually longer, but the battleship was the largest ship other than the carriers. And the fleet was set up with the destroyers on the outside because they had the sonar. And if you got a sonar connected to it, you know, a submarine or something, they have right first chasing it. Then the light cruiser inboard, and the heavy cruiser inboard that, the battleships, and then the carriers were in the center of the whole fleet, because we had to protect them. They were the most important part of the fleet. Oh, but we went. Well, I think it was early in '45. All the battleships left the fleet. Twice we had left the fleet about 1700 and traveled all night till we got off the coast of Japan, Yokosuka, where the Japanese Navy base was, and all the battleships bombarded. Early in the, I guess until we used up all the 16-inch shells. I'm sure they were armor piercing because. But
tell me about what it's like when you're bombarding. What's the noises you're hearing in the going up to your position and coming back? Just walk through, I guess, a night of bombardment.
Oh, you mean during the night?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just what was it like to you?
You just cruise in the ocean. You just hit the water. That's all.
But the bombardments themselves.
Oh, the bombardment. Waters, and of course all us 40 millimeter gun people were on up top side, and 20 millimeter guns. We were all at our battle stations, and of course when they fired those 16-inch guns, you had to cover your ears. And I guess a couple times I probably didn't cover my ears because this is my bad ear. So, but we saw one thing in the daytime when we used to practice gunnery. The funny thing is the guns are all even, but when they fired, the projectiles would go through the air like this, and two at the bottom and one at the top, and it just seemed, you could see them go through the air. That was quite a thing to see.
I heard you've been telling stories all day. What's is there anything?
Well, we were rammed on the morning of February 1st, 1941. They were making a maneuver. One of the other ships made a different move, and the U.S.S. Washington hit us on the starboard side. It just wiped our whole hole, big as a destroyer, in the side of the ship. And they had to put a false bow on them. They went back to the States. We crawled back to Pearl Harbor. We stayed in Pearl Harbor all the winter that year. And the rest of that winter got repaired. And then we came back, I think the next year, I think at 50, no, I think it was 54, we came back to Bremerton, Washington, and stayed up in Washington all winter that winter.
What were you thinking when, was it night when the other ship hit you by accident?
Oh yeah, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I had just gotten off mid-watch and crawled in my sack. About 5, I hadn't even got to sleep, and I was on the deck. Knocked me right off. And in fact, my director operator, like I said, I was spotter for 40 millimeter gun mount, and Bill Masden was my director operator, and he was sleeping on top of a 20 millimeter gun box, ammunition box, right behind the conning tower. He lost his shoes and never did find them. He knocked them right off the, yeah,
Knocked his shoes.
Knocked his shoes right off and never did find them.
That's just something.
Yeah.
How quickly did you figure out it was just an accident, or were there just
Oh yeah, I mean, somebody made the wrong move, and that was it. That put us out of commission for a few months. So.
Tell me about around the time when the kamikazes come up. When would that have been?
Well, during the day, we had them during the daylight hours. They used to like to strike if they could, with the sun coming up, and if the try to get on the opposite side of the, so the sun was shining on us while they came over, so we couldn't see them coming in the sun. But we saw them.
You have pretty good eyesight. That way they make you the spotter.
Pardon?
You have pretty good eyesight. That's why they made you the spotter.
Oh, then I had good eyesight. Sure, I had better eyesight than I do today. Don't forget that's 73 years ago. So, yeah.
And you were responsible for shooting one directly. What you remember? What battle that would have been, or what year?
Oh, no, I don't remember. We were somewhere up around probably Iwo Jima or somewhere. We're up in that, getting near the end of the. When the one we shot down, we were getting on nearer up to Iwo Jima, Taiwan. You know, we did Yafudi. We every island all the way up from the Philippines all the way up into Japan. We hit them all. Guam, guess what? Yeah, Iwo Jima. We bombarded Iwo Jima several times before the fleet went on, and. They had to, we had to try to soften it up for the Army and Marines to go ashore. But we had to, I was captain's car driver in Honolulu. The year we spent in Honolulu, and I was coming back from, we were going to go out to sea. We leave Pearl Harbor 0600 the next morning, and took the captain into Admiral Halsey's, heading back to Pearl Harbor to get the executive officer. All of a sudden the blue lights came on. He's a policeman. So I pulled over. The cop says, "Kind of a hurry, sailor, aren't you?" "Well, I don't know." "What are you going to, where are you going?" "Going back to the ship to get the executive officer." So, well, he wrote me up anyway. He gave me ticket. "We want to see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in the Honolulu Police Department." Okay, well, I knew we were pulling out at 0600 the next morning, so I wouldn't tell him we were going to pull out, that I wouldn't be there. And I went, loose lips, sink ships. I didn't know he might have been a spy. How do I know? So 3 months later, out to sea, the master-at-arms comes topside and said, Wright, get in your dress uniform, you're going to the mast. What the hell did I do now? Anyway, I don't know, the master-at-arms said, I got orders. So I got my whites, I went up to mast. I was the last one called up, and the captain was T.J. Kelleher. He was a great guy. He looked at me, he said, the first words out of his mouth was, you were my driver in Honolulu, weren't you, son? And I knew what it was, and I just drained. And, yes, sir. He says, what happened? So, of course, I told him. And I told him I knew we were pulling out, and I went like this in front of the captain. I said, zip my lip, loose lips, sink ships. I wasn't going to tell him we were pulling out at 0600 the next day. He laughed, and he said, give me a little talking to. If that ever happens again, son, you tell the officer of the deck, and we'll take care of it. So that's all it was. But I really was afraid something was wrong. I had a great time there.
What was getting called up to mast? Is that just bringing you up to the bridge, or?
That's the captain's mast. Is like we go in front of the judge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
there's never any good news when you go up there, or?
Well, I don't remember, you know, all the guys that were at mast, but certain infractions or something, somebody puts you on a report, and you have to go to mast, and then he's the judge. He gives you your punishment. But he just gave me a talking to.
You said the captain was a great guy. Tell me about him.
Pardon?
Yeah, you talked Captain
T.J. Kelleher?
T.J. Tell me about him.
Oh, he was a great guy. He was about 6'3", built thin like I am. He was very good. I remember one time, because as I said, my gun mount was right on the 05 level, just above the bridge, and he used to sit over on the starboard side of the bridge, right under my director. And Bill Mazin and I were the only two in the director. The mount was set up over here, and we used to sit and watch when he sat in his stool down under us. And one day we were on watch, and I stood watching him. He kept his eye, he never moved his head. He was looking across the fleet. O.D. Yes. Send a message to Massachusetts and tell her they're back on course. She's 2 degrees off. And that time I really thought proud of him. He knew his business, because he became an admiral, you know. So we had several captains over the course of the time I was on the ship. So that's my life on the U.S.S. Indiana. But we got back from Tokyo Bay, we got back to San Francisco, and here I am on a battleship, and guess what? I was USN. All the USNR guys were getting discharged. They put me on, would you believe, a seagoing tug, the U.S.S. Preserver, and I went right back to Pearl Harbor. And that was an experience, believe me, from a battleship to a seagoing tug. Oh yeah, that was good. In fact, the Preserver she evidently came to the East Coast, and she was the ship that brought the bathyscaphe out off Cape Cod, Mass, when the Thresher sank. They sent that little bathyscaphe down to hunt for her. It was that ship that I was on, that tugboat. So.
Small world.
Yeah, small world.
Tell me about you. You ever get to, I guess, set foot anywhere outside of Pearl Harbor in the Pacific coast, or when you went in the Pacific, it was mainly wherever you got off the ship, it was Pearl Harbor?
Oh yeah, yeah. We used to get liberty in Noumea, New Caledonia, but there wasn't many places that we pulled in at anchor. They would had a large or had places for us to go to liberty, because you're out there trying to get the islands back, and of course, when we get back to Pearl Harbor, we got lots of liberty.
Now you had Marines on the ship with you?
Oh yes, there was a Marine detachment, because we had Admiral Shafroth was on our ship for one tour.
You had an admiral on the ship.
They had admiral's quarters on all the battleships. Yeah, and we did. We had Admiral Shafroth on our tour. One tour we had. He was a. I know you're recording it, but he was probably about, I'd say 5'6" or something like that. He was a big roly-poly guy. When he had inspection, we had to stand, wide apart instead of regular space. He'd go down through these shows. And when we were in port, we always had inspections every Saturday morning. And one day at inspection, the skipper stopped in front of me and he looked me up and down, then he looked me in the face and said, "Do you shave yet, son?" "No, sir." "About time you started," he said. So you knew by the next Saturday morning inspection I had to shave. I never forgot that one either. Because as I said, I was a towhead. Light blonde hair, and so what little whiskers I had didn't show, didn't show like guys with dark beards, But I learned to shave then.
I imagine you would after that.
Pardon?
I said, imagine you would after that.
Oh yeah, well you had to. Yeah.
Were there any other times on shore leave stood out to you?
Any what?
Any other liberty times on off the ship stood out?
Well, of course we spent that one winter. We were in Bremerton, Washington, and I had an aunt that lived up in Calgary, Canada, and of course Washington very rarely got snow. It rained most all along the Washington coast. Well, I got to leave, and because I had an aunt up in Calgary, Canada, and I took a bus from Seattle up through the Snoqualmie Pass, and believe you me, we got up into the pass and there was 30 feet of snow. We got up into Calgary all right. And I remember, because we're in the Pacific, my mother's sister, my aunt Alvin, said, "You have long johns, son?" I said, "Long johns? We're in the Pacific. We don't wear long johns in the Pacific." She gave me a pair of her uncle's long johns while I was up there visiting them. And had a good visit that time, because it was something else. Yeah.
What about tell me, you said your best friend was
Joe Roberts.
Joe Roberts, and you stick with him when you went off the ship, or?
Oh yes, he lived in Haverhill, Mass, and I lived in I started out in Easton, Sharon rather, and when I got married I moved to Easton, the next town over. I knew my wife's brothers because they were living with their uncle on the farm in Easton, and we used to walk over the woods from Sharon to Easton and help them pick the tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff, And I met her out in the tomato field one day. "Get out of here. We're talking man talk." So I asked Tommy, "Where does Gussie live?" "When we go out tonight, I'll show you," he said. "But if anything happens," he says, "you can't blame me." Well, I married her, so I couldn't blame Tommy. I had 56 years with her. And we used to, after we were married, of course, we used to go up to Haverhill to Joe's a lot of times, the weekends and stuff. And we kept in contact over the years. Because it was only an hour and a half up there or something. So Joe had 9 kids. I had 2. Well, I said it, but we actually adopted a girl. We got her 10 days old right out of the hospital. So I have 2 daughters left. His brother-in-law, my son, died at 58. He was 4 years in the Navy and 18 years in the Coast Guard. So
did it really change How did being in the Navy change your just perspective or in how you act? How did it have an effect on you as a man?
On me?
Yes. Just
Well, I was only 19 when I went in, so I was 25 when I come out. What am I going to do? You know, I don't know how it would change my perspective because I knew I had to get a job, and I sold stuff. I sold full of brush. I worked in a window and door company, and then my son was born, and he was preemie. He was only 4'10", and they wouldn't let us take him home till he was 5 pounds. And every day I'd come home from work. Oh, I had in the meantime, he was on special formula, and I got laid off at the window and door place, and I said to Gussie, I said, I got to get a job where we have an income. We have special formula here. I got to make sure. So I went to H.B. Hood in Boston, Mass, the headquarters. I went over to the little plant that was Norwood, Mass, and talked to them about a job, and they sent me into Charlestown, the main plant, did my physical right after Memorial.